Hey everyone, it's Kevin from Holy F*** It's a Music podcast here with another update. Hope you all survived the hellish winds we've had over the last 3 or 4 or 5 days in the province. It's been a little bit crazy. Trampolines been blown over, fences being blown down, so I hope everyone's safe and that no one had too much damage to their property. I wanted to let you know that today's episode is Mark Heisey. So most of you will know Mark from Rebellion Brewing Company or from the Regina business community, but Mark's also a musician, a huge music fan, a vinyl collector, and a great guy to talk to on any number of subjects. So it was wonderful to have him on the episode, and getting to know him on a little bit of a different level, because I already know him from the beer world, but getting to know his musical background and his influences a little bit better was absolutely wonderful. Obviously we're late with this update because we observed Blackout Tuesday yesterday, and I want to talk a little bit about that later, but that's why we're a little bit late posting this. So last week we told you that episode 5 will be Oral Fuentes, the Belizean reggae musician, and I want to let you know too that episode 6 is Canadian National Treasure and Northern Pike Jay Semko. That was a great talk, learning a little bit more about him. I'd never met Jay before, so we had a good couple of hours talking to Jay, and Randy has a hell of a job on his hands to edit that down to a little bit more of a manageable hour and a quarter. That's what we try to around an hour to an hour and a quarter is what we try to aim for. So, but it was entertaining, informative, and Jay's a great talker and a wonderful man. Don't forget to check out our social share from this past Sunday. So that was the Talking 306 podcast. It's hosted by Dale Richardson, who is also the founder of the Sask Podcast Network, and he interviews a lot of interesting people in the province from the political, the news media sort of areas. And while I don't always necessarily find myself aligned with some of those guests politically, they're always very deftly handled interviews and informative and interesting. Like I said, I did want to talk a little bit about yesterday and the stuff that's been going on in the world, and especially down in the States for the last, couple hundred years, but specifically for the last week or so, it's sort of been a little bit more prominent again, with the death of George Floyd and the fallout from that, and a couple of other episodes or events that have happened down there. Holy F***, It's a Music podcast is not a political forum or platform for Randy or I. We both have, fairly strong political views, but we tend to try to focus on the music, because after all, that's what our podcast is about. And I believe that music is a unifier in the world, not a divider. Unless you listen to Nickelback, in which case, that can be a little bit divisive. But for the most part, music brings people together and has that capacity to bind us onto a sort of a common interest and a common cause. However, we do owe, or I certainly, and myself and Randy owe, a huge debt to black culture, black music, black artists. There's no rock and roll without Chuck Berry and Little Richard, so then there's no Beatles, there's no Stones, there's no Zeppelin, no Motorhead, no Soundgarden. We just don't have rock and roll if those early rockers hadn't taken blues music, and if those blues musicians hadn't taken sort of their roots music, we wouldn't have disco, we wouldn't have rap, reggae, jazz. All those forms were pioneered by black artists and are a deeply ingrained part of black culture. So it would be remiss not to recognize that, I think. And so really yesterday for me and for us was about just showing a little bit of solidarity with the black community as they continue to struggle against systemic racism and racial aggression and oppression. I think we all need to do a little bit more when it comes to those things, and I think the thing that I'm learning that I need to do more is listen and try to understand. It's jarring when you see riots on TV and looting and cops firing bullets at protesters and these types of things. It's upsetting, and it jars you, and it can be a little bit easy to say, well, the rioters shouldn't be doing what they're doing, but before we condemn them, I think it is important to think about what are the set of circumstances that have occurred that they are driven to a point where they feel that is their only recourse. And I'm not condoning violence on any side, but that's why I say I think we should listen more, try to understand those points of view, and form more informed opinions about what's going on in the world. So that's all I will say about the matter. A little bit heavy, I know, a little bit heavier than usual, I know, but it's something that's prescient and current, and delayed this update, so I wanted to make sure that people kind of knew what I was thinking about that and why this was delayed. So enjoy today's episode with Mark Keisey. It's an absolute cracker. I very much enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the beer that we drank while we talked to him. Bye bye.
Don't mean anything.